honor, have the honor of hosting day 2 of our conference today. And I just want to thank you all for being here. So, okay, so today is day 2, and our theme is, the world of work and the future of work. And I'm just really, really excited about this conversation, because it is a conversation that needs to be had. And to assist me with having this awesome conversation is Uncle Vic. Well, we call him Uncle Vic, but Mr. Vikela Rankin. He is the founder of Value Ed, the chief vision officer at Value Ed, and this is his dream. And we're just really, really excited to be a part of, what he's always wanted or what he's always seen for his life. And this is his purpose. And it's just really, really exciting and life fulfilling to be a part of this journey that he's on. And then we also have Rifilwe. I'm sure you guys know her already. She's all over. The wonderful Rifilwe is the founder of Nawiri. It is a personal branding company, and we're just really excited to have her on board to also hear all of her opinions, what she thinks about this brilliant topic. And lastly, we also have Elise Macabre, right? Macabre. It's Macabre. She is also the wonderful Elise. She's an outplacement and career management specialist, who's also one of our lovely, lovely hosts at Value Ed. She hosts the Navigating a Job Search program. And when you get the chance, please go onto our website and find out what that program and course is all about. So I just want to again welcome you all for being here. Cool. So our topic today is the world of work / the future of work. And we define the future of work as a result of many forces of change affecting 3 deeply connected dimensions of an organization. It's work, the what, the workforce, the who, and the workplace, the where. The new realities created by these forces these forces of change present us with the complex questions that we're going to be going into shortly. I got that little extract from Deloitte Insights. So if you want to go have a good read, you can just jump on there on Google. So the first question is going to go to Uncle Vic, Mr. Vikela Rankin. So, okay, the future of work and jobs. Where do you see disruptions, and what do we quickly need to unlearn?
Well, thank you, Teko. Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for this wonderful session, and all those that have attended. Thank you for joining. This is, as people who know me, the sort of quintessential bit in discussions that I really get my my teeth around. So, yeah, disruption. It's there, it's happening, and it's happening at a rapid pace. And I think, one of the things that we need to be learning is the ability to diagnose, the ability to be able to assess our environments, and the ability to be able to predict some level of what's going to be happening. Because if we don't do that, we're then going to be doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And we know where that leads. And with the revolution that we have currently digitally, the unlearning for me is the understanding of what is going to get disrupted and what's getting disrupted really, really quickly. So some of the things that we're going to experience is certain jobs, right? Certain jobs are going to be disrupted. And I'm going to take jobs broadly. And let's take, for example, what's the obvious one is in the retail trade, we have a lot of packers. We have a lot of people who put things on shelves. We have a lot of people who take put things in plastic bags. We have a lot of people who are tapping away at the keyboards. And we know that self-drive or self-promote or technology is already existing in retail outlet. Means the end of those individuals. But, you know, added to that, taxis, we're going to have self-drive cars, travel agencies, we're all booking online ourselves. So there's a lot of disruption taking place. But the other big disruption is outsourcing. Outsourcing, whereby companies are beginning to say, we don't have to do this ourselves. We can give it to somebody else to do. It's not only cheaper, but easier. So yeah, I think there's going to be a need for some very serious assessments as individuals to say, where do I go into and what do I do? Otherwise, we might find ourselves going into things that have only got another 3 to 6 to 12 months to survive.
True.
And therefore, that's going to have an impact and a detriment on us. So yeah, that's my little bit for this bit.
Awesome. So, you know, you mentioned, you know, self-driving cars and just things changing basically. And now I have a question for Elise. With the rise of AI, artificial intelligence, humans will always be irreplaceable. But how do we future-proof our workplace?
Thanks, Tseho, and it's really great to be here this evening. And I think the topic we've got tonight is such a big topic. And I think just quickly reflecting back, we had some great discussions and insights shared by leaders in business in yesterday's session. But I think, you know, what Vic is talking about from a technology point of view, what we're experiencing now is not new. I mean, for decades, technology has been replacing humans. I mean, you know, we talk about jobs and just going back, I was just looking back on some jobs, and I mean, you know, does anybody in this group know what a film projectionist is? You know, so I mean, you just look at photography and how photography has changed. So I think, you know, we talk about the word relevance and making sure that we're relevant, but I think the big question is research, and a big consideration is research in terms of future-proofing. So, you know, where are we going? What career path are we actually taking? And what is that going to look like? Because I think there's still a lot that's not clear right now. You know, we as individuals are looking for businesses to give us direction. We as individuals are looking for, you know, somebody steering the course, and it's not always that clear. So I think what's going to be really, really important is for us as individuals, depending on the career path, research, making sure that we're on top of what is happening in our industry, what is happening in our field. If it is evolving, what do we know? And this is where the learn and unlearning component will come in, because, you know, if we're looking at future-proofing ourselves, it's going to be about relevance. It's going to be about ensuring that we've got the competencies and skills. But if we don't know how to align, what are we doing? I mean, how are we going to get there? So I think research, and we tend to shoot in the dark, so to speak. We don't tend to research and do enough reading and knowledge and learning around what's actually happening in our field.
Also, I want to just say a quick shout out to our Facebook audience. I hope you guys, if you still want to tune in, we've been live for about 15 minutes. So if you do want to continue having this conversation with us, purchase a ticket really quickly. And if you can't today, then we have another conference tomorrow, so you can just jump on that. Cool. So Refilwe, what does the future of work look like? I mean, okay, Elise just mentioned that we need to be relevant, you know, with what we want to go into when it comes to the workplace and how we're going into the future. So with you being a brand strategist, being on social media, and you know that is the future, what does the future look like?
Thank you, Tseho. And it's really great to be here this evening. I must say it's very different, because I'm used to being on the other side, the one asking questions on value-add platforms. So it's great to be on the other side. But you know, looking at the future of work, and this speaks to what Uncle Vic always says, right? If you have a smartphone and you have access to data or Wi-Fi, you should not be unemployed. And that is just the reality of it. That is what the future of work is looking like. You know, people using, you know, their skill sets, their talents to create employment for themselves. You know, we've seen now with COVID, so many youngsters rising, right? One of my favorite examples to make on our social media and personal branding program is Elsa from Kenya, right? So she just started really using her iPhone 5, by the way, to make videos, and look at where she is right now. She's living her best life. You know, doing what she loves, you know, living soft life. So I think that is what the future of world is looking like. You know, gone are the days of let me finish matric, let me go to university and do a three-year degree or 4-year degree, you know, to then go and get and stand in line with 500 other people at one company and ask for employment or look for employment. Gone are those days, right? So people are now going to have to wake up to the fact that you have a skill set, focus on what your skill set and you have talents. Now go and create, grow and create jobs for yourself, right? One of the things that Vic mentioned earlier is outsourcing. A lot of companies are going to start outsourcing jobs, right? So they could be outsourcing accountants, right? So you as an accounting graduate, why not start up your own thing and go and be a consultant or go and do accounting for 5 other small businesses instead of going to look for that one job that is actually going to give you 1 salary instead of getting 5 salaries, really.
Definitely.
So I think that is what the future of work is looking like. People taking ownership, young people taking ownership and not waiting in line for that to be given that job, but really using their skill sets and their talents to create employment for themselves. Yeah.
So I think, you know, now this is where the unlearning comes in. How do the youth, we're in Youth Month, you know, but and we have a lot of young valuarians on our call, how do they have that uncomfortable conversation with their parents to tell them, listen, I know that you have this path for me, but I want to be a DJ. You want me to be a lawyer. You want me to be a doctor, but I just want to be a DJ. So how do they have that uncomfortable conversation? How do they get their parents or their guardians, their loved ones to unlearn, you know, stability, what they've always known to be, you know, the path to success? So how do they have that conversation?
Is that for me?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I'm one of those people who, so after matric, right, I didn't know what I wanted to go and study. I didn't really know. I didn't have an idea. All I knew is I wanted to talk to people every single day. I wanted to travel, go meet different places. So it makes sense that I'm in coaching and personal branding now. But I knew that that's what I wanted to do. But I also knew that I have to, you know, it was expected of me to go to university. So I went and studied hospitality management. I went and worked and then, you know, got myself an apartment, got myself a car, got myself the job. And then only then I could focus on what it is that I want to do, right? So I think it is a tricky situation in a sense that you have to finish what you started. So in terms of education element of it, you know, if you are already, you know, like I said, we have a lot of value audience on the platform. So if you are already registered at university and your parents have paid for the first year, second year, whatever, finish what you started. Finish it, you know, and then only then after you can figure out what is it that I'm passionate about and using that qualification, because it doesn't mean now you toss it aside, right? I'm still using what I learned, you know, when I studied hospitality management and, you know, with my other business degree as well. I'm still using those that I've learned there and now what I'm pursuing as my career, right? So it's not to say toss it aside. In terms of having the conversation, if you are still in high school, I think there's so many examples that we can give our parents right now, right? One of the reasons that why Bonang Mateba did her documentary on social media was to show parents that you can actually make a living as being in social media influencer, right? She's a great that we have in South Africa. You know, she started her career very traditionally doing television presenting, but she's now, you know, a very good social media, Instagram influencer, whatever you want to call it, right? So there are great examples to show your parents, I think. And I think, you know, some parents will say, okay, I give you a year, you know, like take a gap year. I think break it down to like, I'm taking a gap year before I go to university, and I'm going to try this photography thing, or I'm going to try this DJing thing. If it doesn't work out for that 1 year, then I will go and pursue that degree or whatever the case is. So I think that's how, you know, for the youngsters who are still in school, break down like that. But there's so many examples. I mean, Elsa, you know, there is Mishali, who started doing makeup, by the way, doing makeup from her laptop while she was still in high school, right? Building that audience, and then waiting and backing it up. Because the other thing is, as young people, what we have to understand is, even though you want to do photography or DJing, whatever the case, you still have to go and study for it at some point. Yes. It's what I say to my brother all the time, because he wants to be a DJ. I said, okay, finish your matric. We'll find there's a DJing school somewhere, you know, because you have to hone in on that talent and perfect it. You have to be excellent in whatever it is that you're doing. So excellence has to speak for itself. That's how you build that brand, right? So Black Coffee studied music. He is Black Coffee right now because he went to UKZN and studied music. So now he understands, and that's why he's the best, one of the best DJs in the world, right? So whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's photography, whatever it is, there is still, you can still learn that and go to school, do a short course or whatever the case is. But yeah, so just start with parents. I'm taking a gap year, 1 year. Give me 1 year. Let me prove it to you. And then if it doesn't work out, we'll visit the conversation again. So yeah.
Uncle Vic, do you have anything to add on to what Refilo has said?
Well,
seeing as you know you're a parent.
Yeah, it was interesting how you started with Refilo, where I was just listening with interest, but it does come from the perspective of how it is that you can persuade your parents, which is a good angle to come from. Look, I mean, I'm going to cite two people who I now follow and listen to quite extensively based on their historical transitioning into this. And one is a guy called Rob Dyrdek. I don't know if any of you have heard of him. He runs that program called Ridiculousness. And he tells you should listen to his podcast. He's now a very successful businessman in the States. He actually owns probably about 90% of MTV, jokingly, but he's become very successful. And he dropped out of school at the age of 16. And one of the things that he says, which is actually applicable to anybody who wants to do anything, it's not a question of, you know, just saying I want to do this and assuming that everybody's going to have a sense of comfort and satisfaction that you just want to do it. To Refilo's point, there needs to be a certain level of deliberateness and, you know, premeditation around it. When he wanted to drop out of school to become a skateboarder, can you believe it? His objective was to become the #1 skateboarder in the world. He sat his parents and his headmaster down and did a PowerPoint presentation to explain detail by detail how he was going to do this. And he said by the time he was done, they looked at him with quite amazement and said, "You've actually put some thought into this, so how do we stop that?" So it's not a question of just jumping up, you know, tomorrow and citing that, you know, this is what I want to do. It's important that there's some kind of calculation behind it, and it's important for you to give some level of security and comfort, not only to yourself, but to others around you, that you are being intentional around what you're doing, as opposed to it being just some fad that's shot up. So if you want to do something like DJing, or if you want to do something that, you know, your parents are not necessarily they're going to look at and go, it's about the power of influence, it's about the power of persuasion, it's about the power of actually being able to articulate what it is that you want to do in such a manner that they may not be 100% convinced, but they at least have that sense of, you know what you're doing, right? Otherwise, it doesn't come across, you know, fairly strong. I said I was going to give you a second person, but he's just slipped out of my mind. But sorry, the last person is a gentleman called Chad Wright, and Chad Wright is an old Navy SEAL, and again, a young guy who dropped out of school at 16, I beg your pardon, and then somewhere along the line got up one morning and decided to become a Navy SEAL. Now, if you know anything about Navy SEAls, it's the toughest part of the Army, right? And at 16, he made a call to go into the Army. Now, everybody thought he was a little bit haywire, and there were a number of tests that he had to perform and pass, not only just to be accepted to go into a testing phase of the Navy SEALs, it was part of his application. Now, again, when people see that this is the direction you want to go, and you go with it with passion, conviction, and purpose, then it becomes a different way in terms of how you're expressing, this is what I want to do. And then sometimes, people, ride that tide with you. So yeah, those are two examples. And to your point, there are lots of other examples, as Refilwe says, of people who pursued what they wanted to do with the vigor that it does, and got the kind of recognition from their parents and others who they might have not got if they didn't do it in that manner.
Yeah. And Elise, do you have anything to add?
I think the big thing that's coming out for me is the planning. And I think to Vic's point around the articulation, and it's selling, right? We know today it's not just, obviously the generation drove this, having a side hustle and following passion and having, following rather working for purpose. And I think we're moving into that environment where we're moving to work for purpose rather than just a job. And I think it's a generation that's coming into the workforce that is teaching us, my generation, that. But I think the planning is so important. I think in everything that we do, it's again the research into it. And to Vic's point, if you're able to present a case as a mother who has a Gen Z and a millennial, I know exactly. I've experienced that, and I've had them go through similar challenges. So I think if you know how to articulate it, this is, I think, the biggest challenge we have. What are our strengths? What are our differentiators? How can we be impactful and to be able to articulate that? And this is where the planning comes in, to really take that step back and really understand, who am I? What is my why? What is the difference I can bring? What is the difference I can make? And what do I want to achieve? And sometimes it might not just necessarily be about what I want. I may know what I don't want. So I don't want to go and study that, or I don't want to go and do something else. But as parents, I know we don't want to hear that. In business, we don't want to hear the problems. We want to, it doesn't mean that the solution has to be exactly perfect, but come forward with something. And I think that's where the planning comes in.
So, now that you've mentioned, that it's okay to follow your purpose. It's okay to find out who you are, so you can pursue what you think your purpose or your dream or your vision is. Okay, we're going to talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the high unemployment rate. So I'm going to go to Uncle Vic. Youth unemployment. What do we need to learn in order to become more productive and effective?
Oh, okay. You've warmed on my subject, right? Which is the foundation of value add. Look, here's some stats that we should all understand a little bit about South Africa and what our challenges are, right? We have 1,000 companies, 1,000, right, that employ about 56% of our population, of our employed population. 1,000 companies.
Wow.
Right? In America, let's take some excellence in terms of performance and productivity and competitiveness, has 31 million companies, right? If you add up all the companies, they make 31 million or so, somewhere around there. And 31 million companies, 99.999% of them are small companies. And they define small by less than 500 employees. Some may say 500 employees. That sounds like a fairly large company. But let me take it even further down. 89% of that 31 million companies, right, actually employ 20 and less people. Now, how do we get more productive? We create lots of small businesses. That's how we get productive. How is America? I know we always think about these big companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook, et cetera, et cetera. They are a tiny, minute proportion versus the entire economy of America in terms of what's turning that entire engine. 89% of all businesses, 89, almost 90% of all businesses in America have 20 people or less in them, or less. So for us to get productive, we can't be counting on 1,000 people, 1,000 companies trying to employ this mass group of youth that are just filtering out, right? The other thing, of course, is that we're in an age where, to be frank, a matric certificate doesn't mean much. Back in the day, you got employed in the days that Elise and I come from. Maybe more me, Elise, but you got employed with a matric certificate. You could get some kind of trade job with a matric certificate. Now you can't.
It's true.
Not adding any value. So what I believe in terms of increasing productivity, dealing with youth unemployment, is that as a country, from its legislative policies, from its processes, has to unequivocally steer and encourage this thing of what Refilwe was saying earlier is, what is my passion? What is my skill? What have I learned, right? What need is out there, right? There's some people who need someone to help them with Excel spreadsheets, as we always use as an example. I'm good at Excel spreadsheets, right? How do I solution that need so that people can come to me, personal branding and social media and all that sort of thing, and utilize me? And then how do I create a commercial model so that it becomes a viable business for us to run? That's the engine in Europe and in the US. That's the engine we need to create here to minimize that. Waiting for organizations to deal with this, to improve productivity, to improve competitiveness, to improve unemployment, is proving, again, doing the same thing over and over again, not working. So we have to learn new ways and unlearn these old ways of what used to work to introduce what should work.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And a question for Refilwe, with regards to what Uncle Vic just mentioned, I'd like to ask, what skills should young people be investing in to prepare for the future?
Oh wow. So I think over and above investing in their own talents, so trying to make sure that I think either Elise or Uncle Vic mentioned earlier, what makes you stand out, because the truth is, there are a lot of people who are just as talented as you are in the same thing. So what makes you stand out? So I think looking into that, I think excellence is a big one. There's a lot of mediocre things out here and people, so you have to really hone in on that talent. Leadership is a big one. Whether you are going to create your own thing, have your own company, be self-employed, whatever the case is, or you are going to go the corporate route, leadership is a big skill to be focusing on. Flexibility and adaptability. As we see with COVID, right? So you have a lot of, even the kids who are now still in university, the transition from traditional schooling of attending lectures, attending classes, and now everything is online. I mean, I have people who don't know how to manage their calendars, and it's like, I'm inviting you to an interview. You say you want a job, and I'm inviting you to an interview. You don't know how to do this. So, people have to be flexible and adapt very quickly to the environment. I think we saw really a 180 with when COVID hit, where everything was just on its head, right? So that is a big one. Tech savvy. You have to be tech savvy, the young and the old. Have to be. At the end of the year, if I hear somebody saying, "Is my screen? Am I sharing? Or can you see me on Zoom call?" I'm just going to give you a side eye, because it's been over a year now. Come on, I mean, it's just like, come on now. I had an interview this week. I was interviewing graduates. And this person so Teams was not working. Microsoft Teams said, "I'll quickly send you a WebEx link." They don't know how to use WebEx. And it's like, but this is the world that we're living in. If I say Google Meets, I expect you to know Google Meets. If I say WebEx, I expect you to know how to navigate your world. If I say, that is just the world. That is where we're living right now, right? If I say go and create an event on LinkedIn, please know how to do that, right? So it is just that thing that's the world we're living in. And unfortunately, if you don't know how to do those things, then you're going to be left behind, right? I see a lot of people still endorsing Microsoft Office, Microsoft Word, and PowerPoint on LinkedIn. And I'm like, but isn't that a given already? I mean, it's 2021. That should be a given already. If you've been using a laptop, you know, if you've gone through a university degree, because end user computing is a module that's compulsory in most universities, right? So, you know, I want to see endorsement on leadership. I want to see, you know, critical thinking, not Microsoft Word. That's a given, and it should be a given, you know. Communication and emotional intelligence, that is a big one, because we are also, you know, dealing with so many generations as well, right? You know, it's diversity. I mean, it's a very diverse workforce right now. So communication is a big one. I've seen, you know, having to, in a company where the CEO or the vice president is 60 years old and the intern, their ID number starts with 000, you know. Whoa. It's like how young they are. So that's a gap right there in terms of, you know, the different generations that you are. So learning how to communicate in that space, learning how to communicate with your peers as well. You know, I think probably Alison will speak about this tomorrow in terms of networking, right? Because that's when communication comes in, right? So if you want to move up a corporate ladder, or you want to move up in whatever space fields that you're in, networking is a big thing, and communication is a part of that as well. And then emotional intelligence, you know, that is also another one. You just need to work on that. And young people, sometimes what we call WAPAP, you just open your mouth and it's just like things coming out. You know, you don't think before that. There's no emotional intelligence linked with that. So that is one thing that we need to look into. Creativity and innovation as well. That is a big skill that we all have to, you know, all generations, I think, have to be looking into. If you are part of in your 40s and you still have 20 more years to be in the corporate space, Udemy has some great courses. Go and, you know, build up your creativity. But for young people as well, not to be afraid to bring that into, if you are getting into the corporate space, if you are being one of the lucky ones being employed by the 1,000 companies, bring your creativity forward, you know, and because it is like such a diverse workforce, as I said, and you'll be surprised that, you know, those creative elements, where they can take you, because I've had experiences like that. So those are just a few skills that I would say, you know, for the youth who are here to focus on. But first and foremost, you know, we've spoken about just the talents, the passion, whatever it is that you're passionate about, whatever it is that you want to get into, practice that, practice that, you know, refine it, work on it, because that's what's going to differentiate you as well from the.
I have a personal question that I'd also like to pose to Uncle Vic, that, you know, things have changed, whether we want to admit it or not, and qualifications don't carry as much weight as they used to. What does the future look like in those terms? Does one follow their dreams, their purpose, or their talent, or do they continue, you know, going on that academic route at all costs, even though you're unhappy? When it comes to unlearning and to learn, when it comes to, you know, your happiness, when it comes to, you know, the future of work, what does the future look like?
Well, yeah, and I'll be interested to hear Elise talk about this as well. But yeah, I mean, so let's go back to appreciate the power of a qualification some time back. It stipulated certain things in terms of your ability to have assumed certain levels of knowledge, your ability to have completed a certain standard of education, and job seekers tended to look for that as a prerequisite. I mean, when I finished university, I could finish university with a geography degree and I'll get a job. The two were not necessarily related. It was really the context of the qualification in relation to the expectation that people had of it. I think where there's a difference now, where we shouldn't go too much to the extreme of saying qualification is not important, is that the qualification now should signify something about you. And it should signify something about you, not only from the perspective of, I just want to complete this, get it out of the way, get the qualifications, off I go. So I'm just going to cram this, and then tomorrow it's going to be forgotten information. It should say something about you in the terms of, this is what I want to learn, right? So it's about a learning process now. And the qualification will take you to a certain point, and post that point, it's about you continuously learning. And I think that is the construct that we have to unlearn from before. I have a degree, master's in psychology and contemporary European studies, and it sounds wonderful, but it's 30 years old and I haven't touched it. So ask me about it, right? Whereas if somebody is learning something and wants the qualification from it, that's great. That just says something about your ability to understand and measure yourself at what level you've achieved against that qualification that you're getting. So it shouldn't be denied. But what it should also say is that I want to continue in this route. So going back to, should it be something I don't like? No. I mean, I think we're in an age now where we're comfortable in understanding that everything that you do has the proponent of giving you some kind of levels of security, income, satisfaction, whatever you want to call it. Everything, right? As Elise was saying, there's certain things that back in the day have gone, but today there's lots of them. People getting satisfaction from being influencers who, you know, or doing reality shows. Everything that you do today has a level of bringing some level of satisfaction if it's something that you want to do. So that's not the debate anymore about whether or not you need to be a doctor or a lawyer because these are the only secure jobs that are there. We now know that's not the case. So now we can start assessing as to what it is that I'm passionate about, purposed about, skilled at, and capable of doing. So if you do that from the context of a qualification, great, fantastic. But continuously learn and improve and add to it and mold it and take it to its umpteenth degree. You know, Refuel talks about being excellent. Try to be excellent at it and digest that information and be good at it. And the skills that she mentioned are things that one would have to do continuously learning, right? Because if you use my communication skills from 20 years ago, they're not going to be very good today. So one is always having to improve themselves. So there's no end to qualifications. They're still there. Just choose the right one.
Just choose the right one. So you need to do your research as well, and you need to know yourself.
You do.
Can I just add as well, Tejo, you know, and there are some, you know, jobs, whatever you want to call it, careers that do require a qualification. I'm not going to trust a doctor that did not go to medical school, you know, and if that is your passion, you know, you have to go and do the 8 years or 7 years or whatever, you know, of medical school and actually qualify. So there are some careers that, you know, there are people who are very much passionate about, you know, and want to go and study. And you need to put in the hours and the years in terms of getting that qualification. So I think let's not confuse that, oh, I don't actually have to, I can just go and pursue my passion and whatever the case is and not have to go to school, because there are some that do require that you actually go to school, you know. So yeah, let's just not confuse that.
You're right. And I think the wonderful thing is that we're having these conversations for the youth to get this information from someone, reliable people who have been through this life, who have been through adulting and who know, you know, the kind of struggles or challenges that you come across. So I think these conversations are definitely necessary. Elise, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just I think in qualification, I think it's such a tough one at the moment, and I think this is where, you know, the youth and individuals are having to make decisions on qualification, and it's a tough one to make a decision. So, you know, reach for support, look to people to get advice and guidance. If you don't know how to navigate the search or research for information, find somebody that can help you with it. You know, Google is an amazing tool, but wow, there's just so much information available there. And I think in terms of qualification, I think also we're sitting in a world, if I can put it that way, where, you know, you've got some employers that are saying qualification doesn't matter. And yes, to Refielwe's points, certain jobs don't necessarily, it doesn't matter. But it doesn't mean that you can opt out completely from studying. And I think this is where the relevance in terms of qualifications being so important. I see so many people that, you know, now they're going overboard. I'm doing this Udemy course, and then this LinkedIn Learning course, and then I'm doing this course and that course and so forth. And I'm going, great, you're filling this bucket of what? So again, back to purpose and relevance and being meaningful. So you can go and do, there are such amazing free courses, because we know to study is expensive. It's not cheap. It comes at a price tag. So you may have a qualification now. Maybe it's not where you want to be. Maybe it's not what you entirely wanted to do. You want to study further. So part of your planning in terms of your career path planning is also, what is it that I want to study? You know, what other learning do I want? Because either the company, because we know, you know, to remain relevant, they need to future-proof. So there it's about learning and reskilling people to make sure that they're relevant. So there is some degree of responsibility, we hope, from employers and companies. But what if they are not going to invest in you? At the end of the day, you're still accountable for you, and you need to manage that path. So, you know, yes, look at these free courses. There's, you know, and consider that. But at the same part, you can put this into your plan. That is part of your career. If you're going back into corporate, you know, that can be part of your requirements in terms of your future learning. So you coming in from a place of knowledge, you've got some kind of direction, you're not waiting for direction, you know. So I think this is really important, you know, to take that time and reflect and really think about self and what it is that I want to achieve. And I know fear can actually paralyze us. So we can be so terrified about the unknown that we do nothing. And that's not good either, you know. So if you don't know, find somebody that can help you. I have a saying, if you don't know and nobody's telling you, still don't know. So find somebody that can help you. And I think that's what Value Ed is doing, which is really, really great. It's a great platform in terms of sharing knowledge to help people on their paths.
That is true. That is true. We also have a question in the chat box. Josh? Okay, let's see. The question is, what type of leader will thrive and be excellent in the future of work? From Mutudi. Thank you for your question.
Yeah, nice question. Well, okay. So I think we need leaders who are futurists. I think we need leaders who are visionary. I think we need leaders who are very comfortable in change. I think very differently to the leader of maybe 20 years ago. The leader of tomorrow needs to be somebody who is agile enough to be able to assess very critically what is the next path or direction or route that they need to go. I think we need leaders whose decision making is not linked to the old ways of doing things. Leaders who have the capacity to scenario plan. Leaders who very much work in teams. So the leaders of the future are not about the competitiveness, but about the collaboration and the connectedness that they need to seek. So I think those are the kind of traits, because let me tell you, nobody can see, there's like lots of, now we've got lots of crystal balls, right? But one leader is not going to be able to look at them. They're going to need a team of people to come along and say, well, what do you think here? And what do you think there? And what happens when this thing? What's your view on that? And, you know, and hence it was mentioned earlier about this generational complexity or that's in the office place now, so to speak. You know, everybody from traditionalists to Gen Zs. And everybody now has a role to play in their crystal ball to be able to say, this is what I think is going to be happening, and this is what's changing things, and this is what's moving things. So you need the leaders that are able to be able to navigate that kind of future.
I agree. Elise?
Yeah, if I can also just add, and I mean, absolutely, Vic, and I think also it's around, the communication and the engagement. And I like to refer to connected conversations. I think, I hear particularly the youth and graduates, stepping into the world of work. And, the job is not what I thought it was going to be. The expectations are completely off from what I expected. My performance, I'm suddenly sitting in a meeting on a quarterly basis and having this uncomfortable conversation around my performance. And I think we do have a lot more challenges now in the new world of work, because obviously we're working remotely, or we've got this hybrid sort of way of working that's coming in. So, communication from a leadership point of view, having connected conversations, showing that human interest. We know that wellness in the workplace is a massive issue. It's risen, it always was. It's just obviously risen greatly because of this remote working. It's not going to go away. So, leaders need to have compassion and empathy. They need to manage performance, but it was covered in last night's session as well. They've got to be able to trust. So I think that's where the communication becomes so important in terms of managing and leading the teams, and obviously being able to articulate. And again, when you start to look at the generation gaps and generation levels, is to be able to communicate at the different levels, I think is so important for leaders going forward. And leaders today it's already here. I think leaders need to be adapting and be very adaptable and agile. I mean, we're expecting our workforce to be agile and adaptable, but we're not setting the parameters. We're not managing the expectations. We're not leading, and therefore we're expecting. So I think this is where we've seen a heightened level of wellness issues in the workplace because of, unfortunately, leaders that haven't actually possibly even been given the tools in terms of how to respond to this new working environment. So it's not necessarily that they're bad leaders. They're also been navigating through this time and not having the tools or access to the support that they need in order to lead the teams.
And maybe can I just add one more thing there, Elise, that leadership is it's a position, not a title. And the reason why that is that everything that Elise has mentioned and all the stuff that I mentioned, those are skills. If you have those skills, you become a leader, right? Not I'm promoted into a job, then I become a leader, right? It's so the acquisition of those skills means that you can, which actually means that, and somebody said this the other, some time back, and I was quite dumbfounded by it, but it's true. It actually means that once I've got those skills, I can take that leadership position in anything that I do, whether I'm working at Eskom, or whether I'm working in the mine, or whether I'm working as a DJ, or where I'm working, wherever it is, I take that with me. And therefore, when you're looking for a leader, you're not looking for the title. You're looking for the skill. And once you've got the skill, you can put them in the middle of anything, even if they haven't got the experience behind it. They'll apply the skill in order to articulate the leadership.
And if I can jump on, because this is such an important topic, because I think we've possibly got individuals that are here today that are going, okay, that's great, that's what I want from my lead, or that's what my lead, but I want to be that one day. And I am an aspiring leader, or this is my passion, is to lead. So how do I get there? Back to the point, Vic, is around the skills. And back to you might not have leadership experience at the moment. This is where are the opportunities to put your hand up? So whether it be at uni, whether it be at work, whether it be volunteering, it might be, getting involved in leadership opportunities through your church. There are many volunteering opportunities that you can gain leadership experience, and you can gain competencies and skills in sort of the informal workplace as well. And we tend to not think that matters on a CV. We tend to think what matters is the job that I have, but yet I've done volunteer work and I've done, and I've had leadership opportunities during my degree. I led a project, or I led a particular case study or something along those lines. So again, this is back to really understanding who I am, what I've done, what is my value, what are my strengths. And if you are a future leader, that's great. I promise you, businesses want to know that. They're looking for that. It doesn't mean you have to come into the workplace with leadership experience. They want to know that you've got the potential. So you've got to be able to demonstrate that you have the potential to be a leader, because businesses, if you're going to go into corporate, want to be able to identify future leaders, because then there's leadership programs and they want to develop you in that particular path from a succession plan. So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you so much, Elise. Refilwe, do you
I think everything that everything that that Vic and Elisa said is very great. What I will share is that, coming from a leadership academy, we were basically, groomed to be leaders, right? And the big thing that was taught and that was pushed with, or that was stressed, is servant leadership. And coming into the corporate, having been in the corporate space, I also recognize that the great leaders are those who come from a servant place, right? Our vice president, often says, my job is to avail myself to assist wherever I can, right? So as a leader, a lot of times I feel like, managers or leaders, they hire people, but they don't let them do their job, right? So as a leader, I feel, in my experience, the ones that I've at least liked and have loved to be under are those leaders who have, allowed me to come into a space and do what I'm meant to be doing. And they have availed themselves, to then make sure that I achieve the results, deliver on whatever it is that I'm supposed to be delivering on. But really, I think if you come from that space as a leader of, a servant leadership, I think that's a great place to start. And we've seen it with, as the team who works on Valuate with Vic. It really is a space of, I've brought in this team for you guys to let's all work on this big dream together, but also availing himself to say, tell me what I need to do as a leader to make sure that your job is easier to do, right? Because you have come with your own experience and your expertise, and I'm not going to interfere or stand in the way of that. I'm just going to do whatever it is that's necessary to ensure that you are able to deliver on this task that you're being given. So I think that is really a great place, because it also creates an environment that's a safe space, right? A lot of graduates are coming on, young people. So creating that safe space to say, okay, if I'm struggling, I can go to my leader and say, hey, I'm struggling. Please help me with this, or whatever this, or I need this, I need that. In order to deliver on whatever task that I've been given, whatever it is that I have to deliver from. So for me as a leader, I do a lot of volunteer work, as Elise has said. Even with my graduates that I manage, I always come from a place of servant leadership. So I think that's, a lot of leaders who are here or aspiring should probably start there at least.
Definitely. We have a question in the chat box.
Right. So next question is from Mamletseho. It reads as follows: youth unemployment is definitely a problem in South Africa. Does this high rate show the gaps we have in our education system, i.e. helping youth to think about entrepreneurship early on in their schooling career? Does it also show how our government is fading the youth by not creating enough platforms to help self-starters with funding to own startup businesses?
Great question, Auslitseho. Uncle Vic, the floor is yours.
I almost feel my wife directed that to me. I would, if to use the word failing would be polite. It's a cataclysmic disaster. If you talk about the constructs of unlearning, and relearning, It really resides right there in those institutions. And there are some good schools that are doing the right things in putting into place initiatives that not just follow a curriculum, because ultimately you must remember that the school has a single objective, is to fulfill a curriculum that at the end of the day, people need to pass matric and there needs to be some kind of percentage pass rate, right? There are several levels in which schools are failing individuals, and particularly the students that are there. The one level is that it's still test-based. So we're still measuring capability from a pass mark, right? And that's very antiquated, because the principle of continuous learning is that even though I might get 25% today, I may get 35% tomorrow, and then I may get 50% the next day, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the standard element of assuming certain capability through one test is outdated. The other element that Mrs. Rankin mentions is this element of preparing them for the skills required of the future. So schools have now endeavored to have skill-based testing, right? So let me find out what you're good at, and then let me pursue that capability of improving that thing that you're good at, as opposed to, I love music and I get 100% at music, but somehow you're digging this physics into me, right? And I'm not getting it. And you take the physician who's brilliant at physics and you're making them try and play the cello. And they're like, I don't want to do this, right? So let's find and adapt the skills-based capability of the individual to progress them into the future. And that was the last point I was going to make, which is, this is not about clumping everybody into the same group. We now need to be very specific at the youngest levels to understand what the individual capability is and elevate that to its highest form. And that hasn't changed. There's, in the majority of schools, that learning is completely not learned. There's no unlearning of the old ways. The 63%, it was 57%, and it was 52% before that, It's just getting worse. And nobody's going, oh, hang on a second, maybe this is not working. Let me try something new.
I mean, it is a scary statistic, when you realize where we are when it comes to the high employment rate in South Africa. And I think it's a conversation I also had a while ago about, where there's a gap that we need to bridge. And I'm not sure where we're going wrong. Like I also mentioned, is it the education system? Is it parents? How are we gonna fix, the problem that we have? We also have a chat.
Can I just add on that,
yes.
Tefo? So I don't necessarily think that it's all an education problem, right? So because I come from a school that allowed you to go in and study music, right? So we have 100% pass rate, not only because the students are brilliant, but because also, and not because the school, the teachers as well, but, we are encouraged to say, go and, so, traditionally in South African public schools, especially, so they have the commerce, or subjects. So you go and do business, economics and accounting, or you go do the sciences. So you have to do physics, life sciences, and I can't remember the other one, or you in geography, I think, as well. So I did drama, I did business, I did drama, history, and geography. I dropped geography and then did business, right? You will not find that those subject combinations and pure maths, right? You will not find those subject combinations in any, like in normal schools in South Africa, right? So we were encouraged to say, go and study whatever subject you want to study and we'll figure it out, timetables, whatever the case is, right? But there's still an element, I still have, classmates that I went to school with who are now unemployed at home with a degree, and still waiting for a job, right? So I think at the end of it also, there are a lot of factors. Yes, government, they need to, change the education system and all of that. Parents need to come to the party, but I think individuals also need to come to the party as well. And this is one thing that, Uncle Vig and I always speak about. Every time I hear that, oh, there's young people who are not, and I'm like, I'm also young. Okay? I'm also very young. And so I think it is also an individual thing. It's a mindset shift that needs to be there, that needs to be working. Because, we've been preaching entrepreneurship right now. There are, as an entrepreneur right now, there's so many things that I'm getting exposed to that I'm like, oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know this funding. I didn't know this, because I never looked for it. I never had a reason to look for it as well, right? But once now I got into that entrepreneurship mindset that, hey, baby girl, wake up, Voga, go and look for opportunities. Now I'm finding those opportunities. So it really is also a mindset shift, and it's everything. Zonke bonke, it's government, it's the schooling system, it's the parents, and it's you. First and foremost, it's you, the person.
I agree. One must always take responsibility for their own lives. Definitely. We have 2 questions in the chat box, Josh.
Sure thing. So first question is from Bumalelo Nkize. Do you believe the schooling system is being pushed because governments aren't ready for work adjusting to the new norm of learning will require?
I'll pass that question to Elise.
You're on mute.
Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry, Josh, can you just repeat that question again? Sorry, my connection broke there.
No problem. Do you believe the schooling system is being pushed because governments aren't ready for the work adjusting to the new form of learning will require?
That's a tough question, and I think there are a lot of schools that are trying to adapt. I think it's a loaded question. I think there's a lot of extenuating circumstances that sit around that. I know that when you start to look at the future of work, when you look at AI, you've got government that have got bodies that are looking at, how do we adapt to the future of work and develop those skills. So you've got certain schools and certain companies that are making skills available. There's certain schools that are adapting. My granddaughter is 6 and she was learning programming in nursery school before COVID. So what would that would have been? So 2020 wasn't much of a year, but she was already learning how to code basic, obviously some sort of programming on a computer at the age of 5. So I think, we're starting to see that schools are adapting, but obviously it's not enough. It's not quick enough. But I think this is a global issue. I don't think it's just necessarily a South African issue. We're trying to enhance skills for this, also the future of work and what that looks like. And I've always said, and Vic and I have had this conversation as well, and I've said, but what if I don't have those capabilities? What if I don't have that ability to do those certain skills that the future is looking for? So this is where you've got to think outside of the box, back to what Rafiel was saying in terms of, we're not necessarily all born entrepreneurs, right? You can learn skills, it might be out of your comfort zone, but you've got to start to look and say, well, if it's not being provided for me, back to the responsibility, you've got to start thinking, if the school is not providing it for me, this is back to research and opening up your mind and taking the blinkers off and looking at what is actually happening. Then saying, well, if it's not being provided for me, I need to make it happen. So, and I think as parents, we've also got to say, well, if it's not being made available to me through the educational system that I have, what am I going to do differently to equip my kids and make my kids ready for what this is going to be? So I think, I know we're talking a lot about responsibility and being accountable and responsible, but I've come from a generation, from a work environment, Vic, maybe you, where my managers, my leaders determined my path.
Yes.
They decided whether I got promoted or how I moved up the ranks. That doesn't happen anymore. You've got to make that happen. So I think this is the agility, the unlearning, the learning, unlearning, learning, relearning, the agility that we've got to bring in, and being open to that. Because if it's not being provided, I've got to go and find it. And then looking to the tools and where I can actually go and find it. And I think, yes, we do have challenges from a technology point of view in terms of access, which is another real frustration for me. But, you know, if you can, there are amazing, there's access to learning online. As I said earlier, it doesn't have to all be at a cost. There's amazing skills and tools that, you know, youngsters in high school can already start to learn certain skills. So again, back to sort of identifying your purpose, your want, what is it that you want to achieve? And if it's not being given to you on a silver platter, so to speak, start to look at your plan and find it, well, if those resources are not available to me here, where do I go and find it?
I agree. I feel like, you know, this conversation is so necessary and it needs to be had more often. And unfortunately, we have around about 6 minutes left before we jump into our family meeting. But, you know, this has been such a mind-blowing conversation, because you realize that, you know, as much as you want things to stay the same, they're not. Everything is changing, life is changing, and the future of work is changing, and we need to start thinking outside the box. Start thinking outside the box and being, you know, accountable and you know, doing research and putting ourselves out there and taking initiative in the workplace, at home, even in schools, to try and change, you know, the way we've always been taught to put forward, you know, and be brave enough to say to educators, to principals, to deans, to, you know, parents, to our bosses, and say, listen, this way is not working anymore. And there's so many things that we need to unlearn going forward. So I feel like this is a conversation that needs to be had all the time, you know, in a group of friends, at home, at work, everywhere, really. And I'm just really, really grateful that, you know, our speakers were here to have this conversation with us. And also, unfortunately, I can't take all the questions that were asked. And you can always follow our speakers on social media if you want to learn anything else. Josh is gonna put the handles in the chat box for anyone who wants to follow our social media apps on Facebook, on Instagram. We also have a Value Add account on Instagram, because you can follow that. We also have a YouTube channel. Comment, like, and subscribe. We also have a Facebook page. You can just follow, like our page, so that, you know, we can keep growing. The world needs to know what Value Add has to offer. They need to hear these conversations that we're having, and they need to hear Refilwe. You need to attend Elise's program. They need to hear Uncle Vic speak. We need to be worldwide, like Pumelelo said. And I'm just really, really grateful that you guys took the moment or the time, you know, out of your busy schedule. Nobody would be here, but because you guys value information, you value growth, you value change, you are here with us, and we are really, really grateful for that. And I also want to thank our host, our guest. I want to thank Elise. I want to thank Uncle Vic. I want to thank Refilwe and everybody who's jumped on the second day of our conference. I'm so, so grateful for, you know, giving us the opportunity to have this moment and share these conversations with you guys. And
don't forget tomorrow morning
else, I think we can wrap it up. Yes.
Last session tomorrow
morning.
Last
day of our conference. Tomorrow we're going to have our 3 speakers. It will be Siskoli, we'll have Alison, and Stacey Fong, who will be also discussing. Let me just double check, right? Sorry about that. Okay,
I'll be discussing relationships, network, and marketing.
Woo!
Thank you so much, Refilwe. So that's going to be really, really exciting. So please register. I'll send through the link in the groups. Register
Pajamas
for
the
conference.
No.
Yes. I'll send the register link in the groups, so we can jump on tomorrow morning at 9:30. And I just want to thank everyone once again for joining us this evening. Even though we're going to have another family meeting, I just want to thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you. Awesome stuff.
Thank you, everybody.
See you tomorrow, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Bafana.
Okay.